Good evening and welcome to Perspective. Tonight we break down Pakistan's evolving border security crisis. We will be talking about the DG ISPR's conference and of course the misleading propaganda that has nothing to do with the realities that was laid down bare during this conference. We talk about rugged terrain, cross-border infiltration, terror networks and the complex nexus of smuggling and militancy. We also know the statement that came from the Deputy Prime Minister as he said it's a proxy war. The crackdown that should have taken place in Afghanistan hasn't happened. He also said a proxy war game is not good for anyone. They have no principles, no religion or faith. Their work is extortion. What did the Aman Committee even do? Has it now shut down? It would be good if terrorism ends on its own, but let's hope the time hasn't come when kinetic action has to be taken. The goal is neither a ceasefire nor to teach anyone a lesson. They themselves should resolve this matter through dialogue. We will be breaking down this for you as far as this press conference is concerned, as far as, of course, the spate of terrorism Pakistan continues to battle even as we speak today. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Khurram Dastgir Khan, Defence Minister. Thank you for being with us. We also have a little later on in the program Iftikhar Firdous, who's an Afghan affairs expert, and Sumaira Khan, who's a senior journalist. Khurram Sahab, this spate of terrorism, our fight against it, of course, you know, we've spoken about it for a while. As far as this press conference is concerned, how do you assess the international community's current stance towards Afghanistan, especially with what we have been telling them, keeping the mediation attempt between Afghan Taliban and Pakistan in mind, with mediators, and also what happened in the US not 2 days ago?
The DGISPR's press conference should make many countries and many in Pakistan take off the rose-colored glasses with which we have always seen Afghanistan, and we have suffered, I think it's time to admit, a collective delusion that somehow, since these were fellow Muslims, share certain ethnicities with a certain part of Pakistan, speak that language, that somehow they will be more friendly disposed towards us. And I think it's very clear from day one of Pakistan's founding, many of your audience might not know that Afghanistan was the only country in the world to vote against Pakistan's accession to the United Nations. Although they later reversed that vote, but I think the die was cast that day. So this sense that here is a unstable state on our border, which another second fact is that it's not really a state in the classic sense of a state having a whole apparatus, its infrastructure, its judicial infrastructure, its law and order infrastructure. There is a fluid state, which of course has some remnants of administration, but mostly it is an ungoverned space in which the very basic governance is possible. And we are faced now with that state on our western border, which occasionally, for its own political purposes, keeps raising the specter of a soft border by saying that they don't recognize the Durand line, they don't recognize the international border. And as you have correctly, I think, said in your introduction, that we, because of these soft gloves that we have always used to deal with Afghanistan, particularly over the last half century, the fact is that our western border has become the locus of a massive black and illegal economy. And there the nexus between militants and insurgents and illegal activities like smuggling is now becoming increasingly clear. And it's also becoming increasingly clear, and again for the Pakistani audience, that this smuggling is not a harmless activity or a harmless below the law activity that could now be ignored. It is seriously threatening our national security. And the fact that the state on the other side of the border is now, you used to have some sense that in the end it will prove to be more friend than foe. The fact is that it is a foe and has to be treated like that. It doesn't mean that we stop all interaction. Uh, it also does.
I'm going to interject here because I think you've summed it up very aptly when you say that it is not there, we can't be treating them as anything but foes. But when we talk about the international community with respect to what happened not 2 days ago, this denial mode, what we can refer to as far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned, do you think they're going to snap out of it anytime soon? Like you said, the rose-tinted glasses are off as far as we are concerned, our establishment is concerned. But as far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned, do you see them, coming out of this denial mode?
Not in the short term, at least, because standing in front of the Taliban are the unfortunate citizens of that country, which are desperately poor, desperately hungry, and women and girl children desperately short of rights. And it's that shield in front of them that the international community has seen. And I think, again, it will be news to many of your viewers that up until President Trump assumed office early this year, the United States had been funneling hundreds of millions of dollars to the Afghan Taliban in the name of humanitarian aid. And also, I think if you see what the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Dar, said a short while ago, he said, we are still open to this humanitarian aid, but now we have to make sure, like in many countries, that this aid actually gets to the hungry, gets to the desperately poor, gets to those who cannot feed their families. But otherwise, the issue is that this international community is discovering.
In terms of what you've just said, this humanitarian aid, and you're right, the fact that of course they have been giving a huge amount of aid, whether it's sufficient or not, the question is it's been going for the Afghani people, for the women and children. But the question is, do you see that stance changing now in terms of what the US is now saying, what Donald Trump administration is now saying after, do you envisage a change in policy? Do you envisage a change or perhaps, more stricter measures in place with regard to what is going to the Afghan Taliban, even the people of Afghanistan, for the people of Afghanistan?
I think the national community is going to be much more circumspect in offering its support without any conditions to the Taliban. Because most of what they promised to the United States in Doha, in the Doha Agreement of 2020, they have simply just ignored and not implemented. I mean, they said that they will form an inclusive government. They haven't formed an inclusive government. They said that they're going to respect women's rights and minority rights. That manifestly hasn't happened. And they also said, I think this is relevant to Pakistan, given our recent history, they committed in writing that Afghan soil will not be used for terrorism. But we are a victim, yes. But now there are a increasing frequency of reports which are saying that Afghanistan is again becoming an ungoverned space in which international terrorist organizations, I think the last number I read was 12, at least 12 international terrorist organizations have found a foothold in Afghanistan. So I think maybe as of today, the world may not see the threat, but the threat is rising. And in the next few months, I expect that there will be more stricter controls, more stricter issues of immigration and how Afghans are treated. So I think the fundamental issue here is that the behavior of the Afghan state, not only towards Pakistan, but to the other world countries, is raising very valid and very tough questions, which will, answering those tough questions will result in tough measures for the current government in Afghanistan.
There is, you've mentioned the way that they operate with other states also. We were not only part of, we saw what happened with regard to the talks that we had, and we were not only the ones, of course, we and the Afghan Taliban as parties, but we saw mediation and we saw mediators happen. The way that you know, they were gaslit, the way that there was denial mode, the way that we saw, you know, documents coming in that were extremely, you know, they were, you know, an eyewash, and of course would be disregarded, the delaying tactics, all of that with regard to the mediators also. Do you see that changing and their relationship changing? Do you think that, you know, there's a chance? Because earlier on there was talk of perhaps those talks being resumed, but now what the situation is, and of course, you know, how the mediators are also going to be looking at this, you know, the way that their time was wasted, the way that their efforts were wasted. How do you look at that?
The two mediators have learned a lesson that Pakistan learned a long time ago, that organizations which have their basis, however virtuous it might have seemed some decades ago in their fight against the Soviet Union and later against the United States. The fact is that the fundamental basis of creating a state in Afghanistan does not exist. And this is where the United States failed in its 2 decades of presence in Afghanistan, that despite throwing trillions, I mean, $1 trillion+ into Afghanistan, when they left, Afghanistan was hardly better than when they came in. There were some more roads, more schools, but overall the structure of the state remained as primitive and as open to abuse as it used to be. So this is a lesson that is becoming now apparent, and despite all our sympathy for the poor and hungry Afghan people, the fact is that their current government is proving to be a less than honorable citizen of the world, not just the region. And the world will very soon take note, has already begun to take notice after the Washington incident. But there was earlier an incident in Germany. There were incidents of Afghan residents sort of creating disorder in many European cities repeatedly. And there is also an angle to this, that many of these Afghan citizens, because of our own Pakistan's shortcomings, have carry Pakistan's passport. So many of their deeds are put upon Pakistan's name, and then Pakistan is left on the defensive. So that all the more reason that going forward, I think 2 fundamental issues we have to insist and form the basis of any future understanding or talks with the Afghan Taliban. Is number one, is sovereignty, that, you know, they have to be responsible for what happens on their soil, just as we are responsible for what happens on our soil. That's one issue. The second is, of course, that the border is sacrosanct. It cannot be now left open in a flexible and ungoverned state in which so many, yes, there are many Afghans who want to come to Pakistan, they seek medical treatment or education, which is fine. But then the whole passports, visa regimes have to be put in. Even if they don't want to come and work in Pakistan, a work visa has to be put in. But
Khurram Sahab, we also saw in the press conference, there was clear talk about misleading propaganda that is spread about border management. This is what the DG ISPR said. He also said that border management must be joint. Afghan Taliban, they need to facilitate this. But again, in the wake of what happened in the talks, do you see this happening? Of course, you know, like you said, the world is now getting clued to what's happening, what's coming from Afghanistan in terms of terrorism. And that's not just the US, like you said, the German incident in Germany, or you know, the way that this is leading to terrorism, spreading terrorism in the world. Do you see this happening? Do you see the Taliban now coming to these points, which were also, by the way, some of them part of our, earlier talks with them, which failed. So do you think that there's going to be that change now?
That change is only going to happen if you want to change the Afghan government's behavior. We have to change their incentives. It is now proving to be a very straightforward mercantilist government in which clear monetary incentives have to be shown to them for them to act in a certain manner. So in a way, again, it's very primitive form of governance, which is governance nonetheless. So on the border, and I've actually experienced this myself during the recent PDM government, there was this issue that we wanted certain raw materials to come from Afghanistan. And we had to sort of make, after long negotiations and issues of some, emotional issues were also raised. In the end, a clear payment mechanism did the trick, and we were able to import the raw materials that we wanted to. So I think it's very clear that with them, first of all, as I said, set aside all notions of a common ethnicity, common language, and common religion, and deal with them straightforward as our partners in a deal, whether it be a trade deal or a border management deal. It has to be with the right incentives, and only then we can ensure that there is some semblance of a border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. It's also relevant to many of the too long pending projects like TAPI, which is supposed to bring gas from Turkmenistan through Afghanistan to Pakistan. And similarly, the CASA 1000 project was supposed to be an energy connectivity, electricity transmission project. So if a clear payment mechanism can be reached with the Taliban, they might be amenable to let these projects go forward. But then the issue will remain, and I think their international community in Pakistan are in the same boat of how does one ensure that even in the medium term, that the Afghans abide by what they have agreed in writing? Because I said, although there was this issue in Pakistan's negotiations with Afghanistan of Pakistan insisting on a written agreement and the Afghan government refusing a written agreement. The fact is that even when there was a written agreement, like Doha with the United States, the Afghan government, the current Afghan government simply refused to comply. And they are very brazenly now doing all three things which they said they will not do.
Even if we keep that in mind, and like you said, they really have no credibility as far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned. So, we don't know whether they're going to be honoring anything that they say. But also, what about the Indian nexus and the fact that, that there's they're being used as a proxy. So how does one go about eliminating that? That is a very clear factor here in any kind of agreement, in any kind of equation that can possibly be reached with the Afghan Taliban now.
It's a very difficult question because India is essentially financing that attack on Pakistan from the Afghan border. And that's why we have seen, they've seen the incentives that are coming from India just to hurt Pakistan. And that's why we've seen the recent movement of their apparently trade minister also going to Delhi and delegations saying that they're going to form an air corridor, knowing fully well that geography prevents any movement of Indian goods from the air. It becomes prohibitively expensive, or India maybe perhaps is willing to bear that cost just in order to hurt and damage Pakistan. So for the time being, I think it's a question of negotiations seem completely useless in my view. Pakistan just has to demonstrate its resolve and also begin to think deeply about how we police and enforce laws in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. So our internal reckoning and understanding and better management should be an integral part of our hard border that we should now enforce on our western side.
Do you think that, there's also what the DG ISPR said, one of the things, Pakistan is ready for a third-party verified counter-terror agreement. The mediations, the mediators of course, that didn't work as far as the talks are concerned. But do you think that there's a chance if this third-party verified counter-terror agreement can come into being, a realistic chance? And like you said, in the meantime, of course, we are going to continue safeguarding ourselves as usual. But you know, if that can come into place, it has a realistic chance of perhaps taking us forward with a neighbor like Afghanistan. And one has to agree that they are a neighbor and we do share a border. So those realities, of course, continue to exist.
I'm not optimistic. I think the question is that a third-party mediated counterterrorism agreement might be useful, again, if the Afghan government abides by any agreement that it does. And then there has to be some very severe penal and financial clauses in that agreement. If they do not abide by it, then they will have certain penalties, and that penalties have to be administered and guaranteed by the third party, which at the moment I don't see any other country coming forward to do this. And also the fact that these kind of counter-terror agreements with third parties mediation are useful if they become a way to present your evidence without immediately going to war. There is some utility to that. And actually there have been some talk about having a similar arrangement with India before two nuclear powers start lobbing missiles at each other. But I think the fundamental conundrum that we face is that what kind of agreement that we can do with the current Afghan government, that we can have some decent possibility of being adhered to by the Afghan side. I think that possibility is currently very remote, but diplomacy's doors must always be open. Diplomacy's channels must always be open. And if we can certainly agree to continue the talks on such a counter-terror agreement, but as I said, in the short to medium term, any compliance from the Afghan side will remain a very big question.
Khurram Sahib, in your experience, you know, we are talking about a state that is war-ravaged. You know, we talk about their economy, we talk about their people, we talk about their women, we talk about women and children, and really, you know, the civilians who have nothing to do with what is being done from within the Afghan, their land. The question is for them, you know, how important is it to come to some sort of a mainstream rather than remain a war-ravaged land, which is an economy that is used to being functioning, used to function as a war economy, you know. Do you think that they are thinking along those lines? And you know, the fact that how long can they function like this? Those are important questions for themselves, for their own people, right?
What has happened is, I think, and again, it's a challenge for the current Afghan government, is that their credibility regarding providing relief to their people is now in tatters. So in order to regain that credibility, they would have to begin allowing international aid organizations to come in and provide that support to the poor, hungry Afghan people directly to them and not going through the intermediary of their government. Until they begin to do that, I think their credibility will remain in question. So it might happen that if they begin to allow international aid agencies and different NGOs to come and provide relief directly to the Afghan people, that in a year's time or 18 months' time, enough credibility would have been established, which would then again allow restoration of aid directly to the Afghan government. But as of today, this all seems a tall order.
But when you talk about, you mentioned financial incentives or, you know, transactional approach that the Taliban have. In that sense, do you think that that could be used to sort of get them to play ball in the international scenario? Because, you know, the aid that comes from the US, for example, like you mentioned, those are integral funds for them, nevertheless, right? So do you think that that can be used? They already have sanctions on them. If those can be waived, if something of a financial incentive, something like that can be engineered for them to see the futility of what they're being a part of.
I'm very conscious of speaking like a Cassandra who doesn't have any optimism. But the truth is that the continued US assistance to Afghans, there was also massive assistance from European sources after August 21. That aid or support or cash failed to change their behavior in any way. Uh, in terms of where the Western interests lie, I repeat, in having a broad-based government, there's no broad-based government. In respecting women's rights and minority rights, they've actually gone back and are going back on that promise. And of course, I think Pakistan is the principal example in which Afghan soil is demonstrably being used uh, as a base for terrorism against our country, and we have to protect our country. So this issue of there might be you can have a transactional approach, as I said, for very limited projects like we did in our time in government back in PDM 16 months. But for a larger issue, I think some form of talks have to take place. I mean, there's no other way apart from talks, in which the world has to convey that there will be no aid unless there is change in behavior. I think this uh, clear message that if you expect the world community to come and support you, and of course, I mean, my heart goes out to the hungry Afghan people who are suffering because of their government. But the government has to realize, and the world has to say, be categorical in saying that there will be no support until the Afghan government begins to change its behavior in its 3 written commitments in Doha back in 2020. And once the evidence of that change comes in front of us, I think then perhaps new doors of possibility might open.
So I know that you have limited time, but very quickly, when you look at the US, how do you see them, do you see a change? How do you think the US is looking at what happened not 2 days ago, the Donald Trump administration? We know what, the press conference, but overall, in terms of their policy towards Afghanistan now, what happened in the past with America, and, of course, the situation that is brewing within Afghanistan and is leading to all of this. How do you think the US is viewing it?
Well, the US response is understandable, but to my mind, not justified. And again, now I'm taking the other side, which is that any country should not demonize any other nationality because of what a few members do. This is as true for Pakistan as for the United States. So their I think, short-term reaction is understandable that they've had an incident of terrorism right in the heart of US government. And maybe perhaps they will begin to review what happens to them. But they have also this very long history of this very difficult fact for them, is that thousands, if not tens of thousands of Afghans who supported the United States in many ways as translators, as supporters, as helpers, they were left in Afghanistan after the US left because US left in a unseemly hurry. So those people do merit some sympathy from the United States because the United States practically utilized their services and then just discarded them. So yes,
some
it's
reevaluation perhaps happening at the US end, in some shape or form, which we'll see, during the next couple of weeks or months or so.
yes. So there will be a change in behavior. I think again, this anything that happens in the United States puts the whole world on notice, and so the world is going to now. I think the Afghan people across the world should now be ready for more scrutiny. And maybe in that scrutiny, I think some form of, I think some supporters of terror will be apprehended. But as we see our neighbor on the West, we just have to be sure that our minds are clear. And we should be, I think, again, the DG ISPR's presser makes it very clear, but we should be clearer and political parties have to take the lead, that yes, we have sympathy with the Afghan people. We want to, they are our fellow Muslims, and they are, they have share ethnicity with a certain western part of Pakistan. They speak the same language. But when they hurt Pakistan, all that sympathy should be set aside. And our first responsibility should be to our own soil and the protection of the people on that soil.
Thank you so much, Khurram Sahib. I know that you're short of time. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go Sumaira Khan. Sumaira, there's, we heard what happened as far as the ISPR's press conference is concerned. The fact that kinetic operations, the options at this time, the fact that, the rose-tinted glasses are off. How, first of all, what was, the overall temperature? How do you look at the feel of this presser? And, do you see this as a change in what will follow? How do you look at the press conference? How did you, take it, as of course you were you were there also?
Thank you very much. And that's a very pertinent question. As of now, every one of us is we are trying to gather our hunches on this. What's going to happen exactly? But what I could gather from the body language, from the firmness of tone of DG ISPR, the way he spoke to people that day, he took almost all of the questions uh, regarding kinetic and non-kinetic, conventional warfare, non-conventional warfare. Pakistan is obviously handling this non-conventional warfare since now it's last time when I was in Kabul, it was 2024, I guess. And even there, we were talking about how Pakistan was able to fight this non-conventional warfare, because it dates back to our ages and generations. It was just one enemy on the eastern border, but once 9/11 happened and things changed, scenarios changed, people and powers in the world started looking at Muslims with a very different spectacle. So then it was 7th October 2020, 2000 and 2001. And we were being student that time, and we were seeing things. So I can see the same tone that the armed forces had back in then, and now you can multiply it with 100. Mahrukh, I'm very certain of one thing, that whatever Taliban are doing right now in Kabul, they are not listening to other countries, they are not listening to Muslim Ummah, they are not listening to other countries of the world, Muslim countries of the world. Right now I'm in Riyadh, and let me tell you, Riyadh is flourishing right now. Government of Saudi Arabia, they are totally focused on how to upgrade and uplift their people. So why not? What's in the minds of Kabul? So I think why we are having a firm stance and firm tone towards Afghanistan, it is just because of one thing, that Afghanistan is right now not ready to listen to anyone, be it a Muslim country or non-Muslim country. They think that being ragtag and being adhesive, we can being coercive, we can ask the world to get kneel down to their demands and wish and whim. So that's not going to happen. Specifically, if I talk about, I'm coming from a place of very very honest opinion and figure based and evidence based, I must tell you. So
Sumaira, when we talk about the establishment's stance today, after the press conference and what the way forward is, do you see more, do you see Pakistan having, of course, even the Deputy Prime Minister said so, and overall our stance has always been pro-civilians, and we keep that in mind with regard to whatever happens with Afghanistan. But do you see us, perhaps a more stricter approach henceforth after the press conference?
You're very right. What else we can do? I mean, we are left with no other option but to show our might. Sorry if I'm using a wrong word, but actually they have pushed us, and they're pushing us like for last 4 to 5 years uh, quite harder against the wall. And we have been very, brotherly country, behaving like a brotherly country. We were trying to babysit them. We were trying to negotiate with them. We were trying to invite other Muslim countries to intervene and knock some sense into their brains that wake up to the clock. The clock is ticking for you, but they did not. So right now, as I told you, I might sound sort of hard toner, but I'm not a hard toner, not a hardliner right now. Whatever I'm telling you right now, it's writing on the wall. And unfortunately, Afghans are digging their own grave. It's not good for the masses. Probably there is another wave I can foresee another wave of uncertainty in Afghanistan. And once again, it's Afghanistan. In last 50 years, there is no country on the face of earth which is constantly trying to live their lives on the basis of war economy. Fragile, I've seen more fragile countries like Bosnia, like other Chechnya. They all are trying to rise from the ashes. But this country is, I think, in alternative regimes, it's always eyeing on someone to feed their regime and to how we should go about it. I'm sometimes I'm in a very hard time to find a suitable.
Sumaira, what to you was the strongest message to the Taliban to Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban, from that room during the presser?
The sternest message I could gather from that room is that we are having that capability that can root out militancy, extremism, terrorism from within the quarters of Kabul or either Kandahar. We have that capability of striking down each and every safe haven. But you just keep this thing in mind that we gave you a lot of time. You did not listen to us. Now it's your time to face the music. And if you keep supporting terrorism in Pakistan, we'll root out that militancy from inside Afghanistan. So actually, Pakistan has that capability. Everyone saw that in January 2024, when Pakistan, one after another, responded to Iran and then Afghanistan. And it was for the first time that Pakistan struck down targets in Afghanistan. It was Barmal, Khost, Paktika, and two other Ningarhar. And Pakistan, on the through the podium of Foreign Office, they admitted that yes, we did strike down, and we have every right reserved to safeguard lives of our common citizen, specifically our borders' integrity. So the message is very.
So when we talk about the overall environment, of course, harder options. We talk about more engagement, more pressure, because we also saw, the Deputy Prime Minister say that the goal is neither a ceasefire nor to teach anyone a lesson. They themselves should resolve this matter through dialogue. At this time, the hope of them resolving this through dialogue, how do you see it? Do you think there can be an initiation at this time from the Afghan Taliban side? Or is that hoping for too much?
Let me ask this question from you, Mahrukh. What do you think? What country is left on the face of earth that never tried to calm down Taliban in these last 4 to 5 years? So who would be ready to take responsibility of these miscommitments of so-called Afghan Taliban regime? Do you think there is any other country left who has not faced embarrassment because of their fake promises and fake commitments?
You talk about fake promises, fake commitment. Of course, one of the other things that was very much a part of that room was the misinformation, disinformation that was talked about. What is your take on that?
That
because a lot was said about the fact that misinformation is going forward. There is also what is the fake propaganda that comes from the Afghan side. Including false claims about ISIS in Pakistan, in their attempts to shift responsibility, which we saw in the talks also earlier, So that has been very much, a theme as far in any dialogue that they've had with us also.
Exactly. They are in a hippity-hoppity mood, Mahrukh, right now. They're not serious. They are not serious about their country, so there is no question about being serious about Pakistan. The group that is not serious about the upgradation of their own masses, why they would be bothered about me, you, and our generations? So they are right now trying to overcome their financial problems, and they, as I told you in your one of our last interactions on PTV, I told you that they're least bothered, least concerned about any sort of development. You and I and the world, we are wasting time on trying to convince them that, see, this is how countries are run. They are not interested in how countries are run with civility. They have no links with civility. The only thing they need right now is money, more money, and then more money. So their convincing style for me is not new. I'm covering them. I'm covering Afghanistan for almost 19 years now. So I know how their patterns are working, and this particular group is. It comes with a huge shock for me, because in 2021, when they were strolling the streets of Kabul, I thought, okay, the law enforcement situation is good, crime is on zero rate, people are trying to get good hopes from this regime. But no, it was a futile exercise that Pakistan had been advocating for them. So right now, the only card on the table with Pakistan is that, if you want dialogue, first of all, you have to tell us that you are serious in your nature. We don't want Doha 2.0. So if you are trying to get Doha 2.0 just to get your things done, because what I'm hearing right now, they are totally focused on getting their trade corridors to get reopened, because they are very much invested in Afghanistan and India's transit trade through Pakistan. So, there is an element of selfishness. They need their things done, but they don't want to scratch your back at simultaneously. They want their demands to be met, but they are least bothered about Pakistan's demand. Pakistan has had one demand. It was one point agenda, Mahrukh. It's not a rocket science. But yes, for us, it's not a rocket science because we are a peace-loving country. For them, it's almost like blocking all your monetary lines, like a lifeline. So if they have a crackdown on terrorism and terrorists and TTP and others, so from where they'll be having their breads then? So I think Pakistan's demand is very on a very honest base, but I'm sure Afghan Taliban regime is not in a position, because they are behaving like a rent estate, and they would never ever let go the means of their earning for them. So curbing on a terrorist and terrorism is equal to losing your money lifelines for Taliban right now. They would not do it, and
When we talk about our response, it has been measured, legal, based on what is security imperatives, and of course, announce our military operations publicly. The question is, when we talk about mediation, there was, I believe, the DG ISPR responded about reports of mediation. For example, from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, saying that no formal mediation, reports of Saudi mediation, but no formal mediation offer has been made. But of course, Pakistan has excellent relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also. Do you think that there are chances of perhaps more mediation from our countries that enjoy a great relationship with us? Because we saw what happened with the talks and with the mediators there also, as far as in Turkey. And how do you see the future of that?
You see, we were talking earlier. You remember you were conducting programs when the talks were happening, first in Doha, then in Istanbul, and I must appreciate the level of endurance and what do we call it, bardasht ka mada in Pakistanis, that they kept handling situations with a lot sobriety, and they kept going with the patience, with the highest level of patience towards Afghan Taliban. And imagine the sort of demands they were presenting on the table. Okay, we'll discuss about terrorism, but first we need to talk about the refugees, then we need to talk about our trade corridors, third we need to talk about this and that, this and that. So they spent some 7 days in a total futile exercise. Nothing comes out. There is no fallout. There is no outcome. So the Pakistani administration, now they know they're not serious. Afghans are not serious right now, and situation for them is getting tighter and tighter. The noose is getting tightened around their neck right now. Why? Because Tajikistan episode happened. 3 Chinese got killed over there. Their families are right now in such a pain. Uh, they are angry. Then comes the incident at Washington D.C. So situation is not rosy for them, but they still think that they can hunt the world like humpback whales. Have you ever seen a group of humpback whales when they try to hunt in a coordinated group in the sea? They try to scare the hunt first, and then they think that we can get away with murder if we are hunting in the group.
Sumaira, thank you for your very valuable input. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, as we sit here, the DGISPR said dialogue yes, but not a dialogue of the deaf. Dialogue must recognize reality, especially rising armed attacks from Afghanistan. So that is where we are at. Of course, our forces remain fully alert, and we do want dialogue, but a conducive, realist dialogue. Let's hope that the Afghan Taliban can read that line from Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.